The journey to the Zephyrian homeworld took 5 days through hyperspace corridors that defied human understanding of physics. Marcus's ship had been integrated into the alien fleet's formation, surrounded by vessels that looked more like living creatures than machines. Zephys spent most of the journey teaching Marcus basic Zephyrian concepts through their unique mental connection, preparing him for what lay ahead. The Zephyrian homeworld of Ethermore emerged from hyperspace like a jewel suspended in the cosmic void. 3 moons orbited the planet in perfect harmony, their gravitational dance creating aurora-like energy streams across the planet's atmosphere. Cities floated in the clouds themselves, connected by bridges of crystallized air that sparkled with their own inner light. "It's beautiful," Marcus whispered, pressing his face to the viewport. Beside him, Zephys hummed with pride, their scales shifting through colors that spoke of deep love for their home. The royal palace was unlike anything from human imagination. It wasn't built, it was grown, a massive living structure that pulsed with bioluminescent veins. Spires twisted upward like organic spires, reaching toward the sky in impossible spirals. Gardens hung in midair, supported by fields of controlled gravity, while streams of liquid light flowed between floating platforms. Marcus felt increasingly small as they approached the throne chamber. The corridor seemed designed to humble visitors, with walls that showed the history of the Zephyrian civilization in flowing 3-dimensional murals. Thousands of years of art, science, and culture flowed past like a living movie. The throne room itself took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling opened directly to the sky, held back by nothing visible, while the floor was made of some substance that looked like solid starlight. At the center, on a dais that seemed to float without support, sat Queen Lyrelai the Eternal. She was ancient. Marcus could see it in every line of her form, though Zephyrians aged differently than humans. Her scales had turned a deep silver that seemed to contain the wisdom of millennia, and her eyes held depths that made Marcus feel like she could see straight through to his soul. 4 crown-like projections grew from her head, each one pulsing with different colored light. "So," the Queen said, her voice filling the chamber without amplification, "this is the human who saved my grandchild's life." She spoke in perfect English, her accent carrying musical undertones that made every word sound like poetry. Marcus attempted a bow, unsure of proper protocol. "Your Majesty, I was just doing what anyone would—" "No," she interrupted, rising from her throne. "That is where you are wrong, young human. In the past cycle alone, 17 ships passed the location where Zephys lay dying. 16 chose to avoid involvement. Only you stopped to help." The weight of her words settled on Marcus like a physical force. Around the throne room, dozens of Zephyrian nobles watched the exchange with intense interest. Their scales rippled through various colors, and Marcus caught flashes of curiosity, skepticism, and what might have been hope. "Your Majesty," Marcus began carefully, "I understand this situation has larger implications than I first realized. I want you to know that I never intended to create complications for your people or your family." Queen Lyrelai descended from her dais, moving with fluid grace despite her obvious age. "Complications? Child, you have created an opportunity that comes perhaps once in 1,000 years." She gestured, and holographic displays filled the air around them. "Behold the current state of our region of space." The display showed star maps marked with different colored zones. Red areas dominated the view, marked with symbols that even Marcus could recognize as threats. "The Void Hunters," the Queen explained, "have consumed 17 systems in the past year alone. They devour planets, leaving nothing but empty space behind. Traditional alliances have proven insufficient to stop them." Another gesture brought up images of battles, massive space conflicts where even the advanced Zephyrian ships seemed to struggle against dark, angular vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. "Our protective bonds with the guardian beasts have been our greatest strength for millennia, but even they cannot stand against technology that negates the laws of physics themselves." Marcus watched the displays with growing unease. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but I'm not sure how my helping Zephys relates to this threat." The Queen's scales shifted to a color Marcus had never seen before. Deep blue shot through with silver threads. "Because human Marcus Chen, my grandchild has chosen to bond with you, and Zephys is no ordinary heir. They are the last of the prime bloodline, descended directly from the first guardian beast that chose to serve our people. Zephys moved closer to Marcus, their scales brightening with determination. The mental connection between them suddenly intensified, and Marcus felt a flood of images and emotions. He saw the history of the guardian beasts, massive creatures that had once protected entire star systems, their power linked directly to the royal bloodline. He felt Zephys's certainty that humanity represented something new, something that could tip the balance against the Void Hunters. But why me? Marcus asked, the question torn from him by the intensity of the visions. I'm nobody special. I'm just a salvage operator trying to make a living. Exactly, said a new voice. Marcus turned to see another Zephyrian approaching, this one younger than the Queen but radiating authority. Their scales were marked with intricate patterns that spoke of military rank. I am General Vorthon, commander of our forces against the Void Hunters. I have studied human military history extensively. The general gestured, and new displays appeared showing human conflicts throughout history. Your species possesses something we have lost in our millennia of civilization, the ability to act without endless deliberation. You saw a being in need and helped, despite personal risk and unknown consequences. This instinctive courage is exactly what the old legends say the guardian beasts seek in their bonded companions. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the implications. You're talking about me somehow helping in a war against creatures that destroy entire star systems. I don't understand how that's possible. Queen Lirelai moved closer, her ancient eyes fixed on his. The bond between guardian and companion is not merely ceremonial, young human. It creates a synthesis of abilities that exceeds the sum of its parts. Zephys's natural powers, combined with your species' unique adaptability and quick decision-making, could create something unprecedented. Show him, Zephys spoke for the first time since entering the throne room, their musical voice carrying harmonics that made everyone present turn to listen. Let him see what we could become together. The Queen nodded slowly. Very well. But understand, Marcus Chen, that what you are about to experience will change you. The bonding process once begun cannot be undone. You will carry part of Zephys within your mind forever, just as they will carry part of you. Marcus looked at his companion, friend really, though they'd known each other for such a short time. Zephys's scales showed complete trust, absolute faith that he would make the right choice. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about two species, about wars between stars, about forces he barely understood. But at the core of it all was something simple. Zephys believed in him. And in the short time they'd known each other, Marcus had come to believe in Zephys too. What do I need to do? He asked. The Queen's scales brightened with what Marcus now recognized as approval. You must choose to open your mind completely to Zephys, just as they will open theirs to you. The process is intense. Many beings are not strong enough to maintain their sense of self during such total mental integration. Marcus took a deep breath, looking around the throne room at the assembled nobles, at General Vorthon's hopeful expression, at the Queen's ancient wisdom. Then he looked at Zephys, whose every scale radiated trust and affection. I choose to bond with Zephys, he said clearly, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. The Queen raised her arms, and the very air around them began to glow. Then let the ancient rites begin. Let two minds become one will, two spirits become one strength. Let the guardian bond be forged anew. As she spoke, Marcus felt something shifting deep in his mind, a door opening that he hadn't known existed. Through it, he could sense Zephys's consciousness reaching toward his own, vast and warm and utterly alien, yet somehow perfectly compatible. The bonding had begun. 3 days after leaving the mining belt, Marcus noticed the first major change in his passenger. The creature had not only healed completely, but had grown noticeably larger. What had once barely fit in his cargo bay now filled nearly every available space, forcing Marcus to rearrange his equipment storage. The being's appetite had also increased dramatically. Marcus watched in amazement as it consumed energy directly from his ship's power cells, somehow absorbing the electrical current through specialized organs in its palms. The process was beautiful. To watch, streams of blue energy flowed across its scales like living lightning, making its entire body glow with soft radiance. Well, at least you're not hard to feed, Marcus said, replacing another drained power cell. The creature's head turned toward him at the sound of his voice, and Marcus could swear he saw amusement in those deep, violet eyes. Communication had become easier over the past few days. The creature seemed to understand basic human gestures and had begun responding with its own body language. When it was content, its scales shifted to warm golden hues. When curious, they became a brilliant silver. And when it was trying to tell Marcus something important, they flashed in rapid patterns of multiple colors. That's exactly what was happening now. The creature's entire body pulsed with urgent red and white patterns, while it made increasingly insistent musical sounds. Marcus followed its gaze to the navigation display, where an unknown ship had appeared on the scanner. Company, Marcus muttered, his hand moving instinctively to the weapon controls. The ship was large, much larger than anything that should be operating in this remote sector. Its design was unlike anything in the human databases, all flowing. Curves and organic shapes that seemed to blend technology with art. The communication system crackled to life, but instead of words, complex musical tones filled the bridge. Marcus looked at his passenger, whose scales had gone completely white, a color he'd never seen before. The creature was trembling, its musical voice rising to match the tones from the other ship. A translation came through Marcus's computer a moment later, the words appearing in stark text on his screen. Return what belongs to the crown, human vessel. You harbor royal blood unlawfully. Marcus's blood ran cold. Royal blood? He looked at the creature with new understanding. Those weren't just intelligent eyes. They were regal ones. He'd rescued alien royalty without knowing it. This is Captain Chen of the human vessel Wanderer, Marcus transmitted back. I found this being injured and dying in space. I was attempting to return them to their people. The response came swiftly, both in the musical alien language and human translation. Your intentions are noted but irrelevant. Prepare for boarding. The royal heir must be examined for damage and returned to proper care. Marcus felt the creature, the royal heir, press against his leg. Looking down, he saw scales shifting through a complex pattern of blue and gold. The creature's eyes met his, and somehow Marcus understood. It didn't want to go. Not yet. Maybe not at all. Negative, Marcus transmitted, surprising himself with his boldness. The being in my care is injured and recovering. Any transfer will be conducted according to proper medical protocols and with the consent of the patient. The response was immediate and angry. Humans do not dictate terms to the Zephyrian crown. Surrender the heir or face the consequences. The alien ship moved closer, weapon systems powering up. Marcus's little salvage vessel was no match for a warship, but he found himself reluctant to simply hand over his passenger. Something about the way the creature had communicated its reluctance, the trust it had shown during its recovery. It felt wrong to ignore that. The creature moved then, flowing with surprising grace despite its size. It positioned itself near the communication panel and began producing a complex series of musical tones. The response from the other ship was immediate. The weapons powered down, and the aggressive maneuvers stopped. A new voice came through the communication system, older and more formal. Royal Heir Zephys, you live, the crown rejoices, but why do you remain with the human? Your injuries appear healed. The creature, Zephys, continued its musical response. Marcus watched the conversation unfold, wishing he could understand more than the basic emotional patterns in the creature's scales. Whatever Zephys was saying, it was causing quite a stir on the other ship. Finally, the alien voice returned. The heir requests to speak with the human who saved their life. Captain Chen, you will be brought aboard our vessel for audience with Fleet Commander Astra. The heir has made claims about your character that must be verified. Before Marcus could protest, a beam of light enveloped his ship. He felt the familiar sensation of a tractor beam taking hold. But this one was gentler than any human technology he'd experienced. Instead of the usual jarring sensation, it felt like being cradled. Zephys moved close to Marcus, its scales shifting to warm, reassuring colors. One of its 6 hands touched Marcus's shoulder gently, and he felt an odd sensation, like a whisper in his mind, wordless but comforting. The creature was trying to tell him everything would be all right. The boarding process was unlike anything Marcus had experienced. Instead of crude docking tubes, the alien ship created a temporary corridor of solidified energy. Walking through, it felt like moving through liquid starlight, beautiful and completely alien. The ship's interior was breathtaking. Everything curved and flowed like it had grown rather than been built. Bioluminescent panels provided gentle lighting, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with tiny motes of light. Marcus felt like he was walking through a living thing rather than a spacecraft. Fleet Commander Astra was waiting in what appeared to be a garden chamber. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with the same basic body structure as Zephys, but older and more angular. Her scales were a deep purple that spoke of authority and age, and her 4 eyes held wisdom that made Marcus feel very young. "Human Marcus Chen," she said, her words coming through a translation device that made her voice sound both musical and commanding. "The royal heir speaks highly of your actions. They claim you risked your life to save theirs, asking nothing in return." Marcus glanced at Zephys, who had followed him aboard and now stood beside him. "I couldn't just let them die. It was the right thing to do." "The right thing," Astra repeated, as if testing the concept. "Our records show humans are typically motivated by profit or gain. Yet you spent your own resources, risked exposure to authorities, and refused our initial compensation offers." "Why?" Marcus struggled to put his feelings into words. "Because they're a person. I could see the intelligence in their eyes, the awareness. You don't let people die if you can help them, regardless of what species they are." Astra's scales shifted through several colors Marcus couldn't interpret. Behind her, other Zephyrians had gathered, all watching the exchange with intense interest. "The heir wishes to propose something unprecedented," Astra continued. "They request permission to accompany you on your journeys, to learn about human nature and serve as cultural exchange. They believe you have much to teach about what they call instinctive honor." Marcus looked at Zephys in surprise. The creature's scales were bright gold with threads of blue. Colors he'd learned meant hope and anticipation. "You want to come with me? My ship isn't exactly luxury accommodations." Zephys touched his shoulder again, and this time the mental whisper was clearer. Images flashed through Marcus's mind, not words but concepts. Adventure, learning, friendship, protection. The creature didn't just want to come along, it wanted to be his companion, his guardian. "The decision carries great significance," Astra warned. "The royal heir is not merely our monarchy's child, but the inheritor of ancient bonds with creatures that serve as protectors of our people. If they choose to bond with you, it will create connections between our species that cannot be easily severed." Marcus felt the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. His simple act of rescue had grown into something that could reshape relations between species. But looking into Zephys's hopeful eyes, he knew his answer. "If they want to come, I'd be honored to have them aboard." The chamber filled with musical sounds as the gathered Zephyrians responded to his words. Astra's scales shifted to a warm amber that Marcus instinctively understood meant approval. "Then let it be so," she declared. "But know this, human. You now carry the protection of the crown. And crown protection, once given, is never withdrawn." The mining asteroid belt of Kepler 442 was no place for the weak. Marcus Chen had learned that lesson the hard way during his 3 years working the extraction rigs. The void between rocks could kill you in a dozen different ways, and today it seemed determined to add one more to the list. His salvage ship, the Wanderer, drifted through the debris field of what used to be Mining Station Gamma 7. The explosion had scattered metal and ice across thousands of kilometers, creating a hazardous maze that most pilots wouldn't dare navigate. But Marcus wasn't most pilots. He needed the salvage credits, and desperate men took desperate risks. The scanner pinged, indicating another piece of valuable debris. Marcus adjusted his trajectory, threading the needle between 2 spinning chunks of hull plating. His hands moved with practiced precision across the controls, years of experience guiding every movement. The asteroid belt had taught him patience, but it had also taught him when to act fast. That's when he saw it. At first, Marcus thought it was just another piece of wreckage. Something large and dark, tumbling end over end through the void. But as he drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. It wasn't metal or rock. It was alive. The creature was massive, easily the size of his ship. Its body resembled a cross between a dragon and a whale, with scaled hide that shimmered even in the pale starlight. 6 limbs ended in what looked like hands rather than claws, and a long, elegant neck supported a head with intelligence gleaming in its dimming eyes. But what caught Marcus's attention wasn't its alien beauty. It was the gaping wound in its side, leaking a luminous blue fluid into space. "What the hell?" Marcus whispered, bringing his ship to a full stop. He'd seen plenty of strange things in the belt, but never anything like this. The creature's movements were growing weaker, its struggles against the vacuum becoming more desperate. Whatever it was dying. Marcus checked his scanner readings again. No other ships in the area. No distress signals. No explanation for how a living creature had ended up floating in the middle of nowhere. The smart thing would be to leave it alone. Unknown alien species meant complications, and complications meant trouble with the colonial authority. But as he watched the creature's fading struggles, Marcus found himself unable to look away. The beast's head turned toward his ship, and for a moment, their eyes met through the viewport. Even across the vacuum of space, Marcus could see the intelligence there, the awareness of its own approaching death. Something in that gaze reminded him of a dog he'd had as a child, loyal and trusting even when hurt. "Damn it," Marcus muttered, his hands already moving to the cargo bay controls. He'd regret this decision, but he couldn't just watch something die when he might be able to help. The Wanderer's cargo bay was designed for salvage, not rescue operations, but it would have to do. Marcus carefully maneuvered his ship, aligning the bay opening with the drifting creature. The process took nearly an hour of delicate flying, made more difficult by the creature's continued movement and the debris field around them. Getting the beast inside proved to be another challenge entirely. The creature was too weak to help itself, but still massive enough to require careful handling. Marcus used the cargo manipulator arms to gently guide it through the bay doors, trying not to aggravate its wounds further. The luminous blue blood, if that's what it was, had formed crystals in the vacuum, creating an eerie trail behind the creature. Once the bay was sealed and pressurized, Marcus suited up and went to examine his unexpected passenger. Up close, the creature was even more magnificent. Its scales had an iridescent quality that shifted colors as Marcus moved around it. The wound was clearly from some kind of energy weapon, the edges cauterized but still bleeding that strange blue fluid. The creature's breathing was labored but steady. Its eyes tracked Marcus's movements with careful attention, showing no sign of fear or aggression. Instead, there was something almost grateful in its gaze. Marcus had no idea what the creature needed to survive, but he had to try something. His ship's medical bay was designed for humans, but the basic principles of trauma care were universal. Stop the bleeding, prevent infection, maintain vital signs. Marcus worked carefully, using emergency biofoam to seal the worst of the wound. The creature remained still throughout the process, as if it understood he was trying to help. Hours passed as Marcus did what he could with his limited supplies. The creature's breathing gradually became stronger, and the luminous bleeding slowed to a stop. But Marcus knew this was just a temporary measure. He needed to find someone who understood alien physiology, and that meant heading to the nearest station. The journey to Outpost Meridian took 2 days. During that time, Marcus found himself spending more and more time in the cargo bay with his patient. The creature seemed to appreciate the company, following him with its eyes whenever he moved. Sometimes it made soft musical sounds that reminded Marcus of whale songs he'd heard in old Earth documentaries. It was during the 2nd day that Marcus noticed something strange. The creature's wound was healing faster than should have been possible. The biofoam had dissolved away, revealing new tissue underneath that looked completely healthy. Whatever this being was, it had remarkable regenerative abilities. As they approached Outpost Meridian, Marcus faced a difficult decision. He could turn the creature over to the authorities, who would likely want to study it, or he could try to find out where it came from and return it himself. Looking into those intelligent eyes, the choice became clear. This wasn't just some animal, it was a person in its own way, and people deserved to choose their own fate. Marcus changed course, heading away from the outpost and toward the deeper systems where first contact protocols were more flexible. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but something told him that saving this creature was the most important thing he'd ever done. Behind him in the cargo bay, the alien being watched the stars wheel by, its musical voice carrying a note that almost sounded like hope. The bonding process lasted 3 days, though Marcus experienced it as both an eternal moment and a fleeting instant. His consciousness merged with Zephyr's in ways that human language couldn't adequately describe. He felt the vast depth of Zephyrian emotion, the connection to natural energies that flowed through all living things, and the ancient memories passed down through generations of guardian beasts. When he finally opened his eyes, the world had changed forever. Colors were deeper, more nuanced than before. He could see energy patterns flowing through the palace walls, feel the electromagnetic signatures of every person in the room. More importantly, he could sense Zephyr's presence as clearly as his own heartbeat, not as a separate entity, but as part of himself that had always been missing. "How do you feel?" Queen Lyrelai asked, though Marcus somehow knew she was speaking before she opened her mouth. The mental connection with Zephyr had enhanced his perception in ways he was still discovering. "Different," Marcus replied, surprised to hear harmonics in his own voice that echoed Zephyrian speech patterns. "Connected. Like I can feel the energy of everything around me." Zephyr stood beside him, their scales a brilliant gold that spoke of joy and completion. Through their bond, Marcus felt his companion's satisfaction. The process had worked better than anyone had hoped. They weren't just mentally linked, they had become something entirely new. General Vorthon stepped forward, his expression serious. "We need to test the bond's effectiveness immediately. Our scouts report Void Hunter movement in the outer systems. They may have detected the energy signature of the bonding ceremony." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. The bioluminescent walls shifted to a deep red that Marcus instinctively understood meant danger. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel the approach of something wrong. A dead space in the natural energy flows that surrounded the planet. "They're here," Queen Lyrelai said grimly. "The Void Hunters move faster than we anticipated." The throne room ceiling, previously open to the sky, sealed itself with a transparent barrier, just as dark shapes began descending through the atmosphere. The Void Hunter ships defied conventional design. They seemed to be made of darkness itself, angular vessels that absorbed light and gave nothing back. Even through the palace's protection, Marcus could feel their wrongness like a physical ache. "Your Majesty," General Vorthon reported, touching a bioorganic communication device. "Preliminary scans show 12 Harvester-class vessels and 1 Devourer. They're targeting the palace directly." Marcus felt Zephyr's tension through their bond. "What's a Devourer?" he asked. "Death," the Queen replied simply. "Devourers consume not just matter and energy, but the very concepts of existence. Planets touched by their weapons become nothing, not destroyed, simply erased from reality itself." Through the transparent ceiling, Marcus watched as Zephyrian defense forces engaged the Void Hunters. The graceful organic ships of the defenders clashed with the angular nightmares of the attackers in battles that painted the sky with explosions of light and shadow. But even with his limited understanding of space combat, Marcus could see that the defenders were outmatched. "The targeting is too precise," General Vorthon observed grimly. "They're not attacking military targets or population centers. They're coming straight for the palace, straight for you." He looked directly at Marcus. "They know about the bonding." Queen Lyrelai's scales shifted through rapid patterns of color that Marcus now understood indicated complex thought processes. Someone informed them. "The timing is too perfect to be coincidence." "Informed them of what exactly?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer through his connection to Zephyrus. "That humanity might be the key to defeating them," the Queen replied. "Your species' unique neural patterns combined with guardian beast abilities could potentially create weapons that bypass their reality negation technology. They cannot allow that possibility to exist." Explosions rocked the palace as Void Hunter forces broke through the outer defenses. Marcus felt each impact through his enhanced senses, but more disturbing was the way the palace itself seemed to weaken where the dark energy touched it. The living walls actually began to wither, their bioluminescence fading to gray. "We need to get you away from here," General Vorthon declared. "If the Void Hunters capture or kill you before we can test the bond's full potential—" "No," Marcus interrupted, surprising himself with his certainty. Through his connection to Zephyrus, he could feel something building inside both of them, a resonance that grew stronger as the threat approached. "Running won't solve anything. If we're supposed to be some kind of weapon against these things, maybe it's time to find out what we can actually do. Zephys moved closer, their 6 hands beginning to glow with contained energy. Through their bond, Marcus felt his companion's agreement. They had been created for this purpose, forged in the moment of bonding specifically to face this threat. "You don't understand," Queen Lyrelei said urgently. "The bonding process has just been completed. You need time to learn control, to understand your capabilities. Rushing into battle could—" Her words were cut off as the palace shuddered under a massive impact. Through the ceiling, they could see one of the harvester ships descending directly toward the throne room, its hull rippling with energy that made reality itself seem to bend around it. Marcus felt something stirring in his mind. Not his own thoughts, but a combination of his human instincts and Zephys's ancient knowledge. Images flashed through their shared consciousness. Attack patterns, energy manipulation techniques, tactical approaches that seemed to come from both species' military traditions combined into something new. "I can see how to fight them," Marcus said, wonder in his voice. "Through the bond, I can see their weaknesses. They negate natural energy by creating quantum vacuum fields. But if we approach from multiple dimensional angles simultaneously—" General Vorthan's scales brightened with hope. The old legend spoke of this, Guardian Bond tactical fusion. But it's never been tested against Void Hunter technology. "Then I guess we're about to find out if the legends are true," Marcus replied, feeling Zephys's power flowing through him like liquid lightning. The harvester ship reached the palace's outer barrier and began to descend through it. Where its hull touched the protective energy field, holes of absolute nothingness appeared. Not darkness, but the complete absence of existence itself. The sight should have been terrifying, but Marcus felt only determination. Through their bond, he and Zephys began to merge their combat instincts. Marcus's human adaptability and quick decision-making, combined with Zephys's control over natural forces and ancient tactical knowledge. The result was something that had never existed before. A fusion of abilities that transcended what either species could achieve alone. "Everyone needs to evacuate the throne room," Marcus announced, his voice carrying harmonics of command that surprised even him. "What we're about to do, I'm not sure what the range of effect will be." Queen Lyrelei looked at him with something that might have been pride. "The evacuation is already underway. But Marcus, be careful. The bond may give you great power, but you are still learning to use it. Don't let confidence become recklessness." As the palace inhabitants fled toward safer areas, Marcus and Zephys stood alone in the vast throne room, watching their enemies descend. The harvester ship was now close enough that they could see individual void hunters through its translucent hull, beings that seemed to be made of crystallized darkness, their forms shifting between states of matter. "Ready?" Marcus asked his bonded companion. Zephys's response came not in words but in a surge of shared determination that filled every fiber of Marcus's being. Together, they began to glow with an energy that was neither fully human nor fully Zephyrian, but something entirely new. The first real test of the Guardian Bond was about to begin. The harvester ship crashed through the throne room's ceiling like a falling star made of pure darkness. As it descended, reality itself seemed to bend and tear around its hull. Where the ship's energy field touched the palace's living walls, they didn't just die, they ceased to have ever existed, leaving gaps of nothingness that hurt to look at. Marcus felt Zephys's protective instincts surge through their bond as crystalline beings began pouring from the ship's opening. The Void Hunters moved with predatory grace, their forms shifting between solid matter and something that looked like animated shadow. Each one carried weapons that seemed to be carved from the void itself, tools that didn't fire projectiles but instead deleted whatever they touched from existence. "Stay behind me," Marcus heard himself say, though he wasn't sure if the words came from his own throat or Zephys's musical voice. Through their bond, individual identity had become fluid. He was himself, but he was also something greater. The first Void Hunter raised its weapon toward Marcus, and time seemed to slow. Through his enhanced perception, he could see the quantum mechanics of the creature's attack, how it created a localized field of absolute zero-point energy that would erase him from reality itself. But he could also see something the Void Hunters couldn't: the way their reality negation technology left tiny gaps in space-time, gaps that could be exploited. Zephys moved with liquid grace, their massive form flowing around Marcus like a living shield. But instead of simply blocking the attack, they did something unprecedented. The guardian beast's natural energy manipulation abilities, enhanced by Marcus's tactical insight, created a counterfield that didn't oppose the Void Hunter's weapon but redirected it. The deletion beam curved around them like light bending around a black hole, then snapped back to strike its own wielder. The Void Hunter simply vanished, not destroyed, but erased so completely that the air didn't even rush in to fill the space it had occupied. "Impossible," came a voice from the Harvester ship, speaking in perfect English through technology that somehow translated concepts rather than words. "No organic being can manipulate null space fields." More Void Hunters poured from the ship, their weapons charging with energies that made Marcus's enhanced senses scream warnings. But through his bond with Zephys, he felt no fear. Instead, he felt a tactical awareness that seemed to come from somewhere beyond either of their individual minds. "You're right," Marcus called out, his voice carrying harmonics that made the crystalline beings hesitate. "No single organic being can do that. But we're not single beings anymore." Zephys expanded around him, their form growing larger and more luminous. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus directed his companion's energy manipulation with human intuition and adaptability, while Zephys provided the raw power and ancient knowledge. The combination was devastating. The next wave of Void Hunters attacked in coordinated patterns, their deletion beams converging on Marcus and Zephys from multiple angles. But the bonded pair moved as one entity, flowing through spaces that shouldn't have existed, redirecting reality-negating energy with techniques that had never been conceived by either species. Alone, Marcus found himself laughing with pure joy as they danced between attacks that could erase them from existence. Through Zephys, he could feel the guardian beast's ancient pride in battle, the satisfaction of protecting something precious. Through Marcus, Zephys experienced human determination and the refusal to surrender against impossible odds. "Fascinating," the voice from the ship observed, though now it carried notes of concern. "The quantum signature is unlike anything in our databases. You appear to be generating solutions to paradoxes that should be mathematically impossible." "That's humans for you," Marcus replied, directing Zephys to coil around a group of Void Hunters while generating an energy field that trapped them in a bubble of accelerated time. "We specialize in impossible things." The trapped Void Hunters began to age rapidly within the bubble, their crystalline forms developing fractures as temporal energy broke down their molecular cohesion. But instead of dying, they began to fade, not disappearing like when hit by their own weapons, but becoming translucent, as if existence itself was losing interest in them. "That should not be possible," the ship's voice said, and for the first time Marcus detected what might have been fear. "Void Hunters exist outside normal temporal flow. Nothing should be able to trap us in accelerated time fields." Maybe that's the problem, Marcus realized, his enhanced perception showing him patterns in the Void Hunter's energy signatures. "You've spent so long existing outside normal reality that you've forgotten how to adapt to it. You can delete things, but you can't create. You can negate, but you can't overcome." Zephys's agreement flowed through their bond along with a surge of new understanding. The guardian beasts had evolved specifically to protect life and foster growth. Their abilities were fundamentally creative rather than destructive. Combined with human adaptability and problem-solving skills, they represented everything the Void Hunters couldn't understand or counter. The remaining Void Hunters in the throne room began to retreat toward their ship, their crystalline forms flickering with what Marcus now recognized as uncertainty. Through his enhanced senses, he could feel their confusion. They had expected to face conventional energy weapons and physical resistance, not reality manipulation techniques that turned their own strengths against them. "This engagement is concluded," the ship announced. "Data has been gathered. The bonded pair represents a threat level requiring strategic reassessment." "You're not going anywhere," Marcus said, feeling Zephys gather energy for a final attack. Through their bond, he could see the pattern that would trap the Harvester ship in a dimensional loop, preventing its escape while slowly breaking down its reality negation technology. But as they prepared to strike, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Through the damaged ceiling, Marcus could see more Void Hunter ships descending through the atmosphere. Not just Harvesters this time, but massive Devourer-class vessels that made the ship in the throne room look tiny by comparison. "Impressive," the Harvester's voice said with what sounded like satisfaction. "But you have revealed your capabilities too early. The test phase is complete. Now begins the real assault." The ship began to phase out of normal space-time, becoming translucent as it prepared to escape. But before it could fully disappear, Zephys struck with a technique that neither of them had consciously planned. Instead of trying to trap the ship, they synchronized their energy output with its phase transition, creating a quantum entanglement that would allow them to track it anywhere in the galaxy. "Clever," the voice acknowledged as the ship faded away. "But cleverness will not save you from what comes next. You have shown us that the legends were true. Humanity and the guardian beast can indeed threaten our existence. Therefore, both species must be eliminated completely." As the Harvester vanished, Marcus felt the weight of what they had accomplished and what it meant. They had proven that the bond could work, that they could fight the Void Hunters on equal terms. But they had also painted targets on every human and every guardian beast in the galaxy. "Well," Marcus said to Zephys as they watched the Devourer ships position themselves around the planet, "at least we know the bonding works." Zephys's response was a mixture of pride, determination, and protective fury that flowed through their shared consciousness like fire. The guardian beast was ready to face whatever came next, and through their bond, Marcus felt that same readiness spreading through his own mind. Above them, the Devourer ships began to charge weapons that could erase entire continents from existence. The real battle was about to begin, and Marcus and Zephys would be at the center of it. Together they were something new, something that could give the galaxy hope against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. But first they had to survive what was coming next. The Devourer ships hung in Ethermore's sky like wounds in reality itself. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, their hulls absorbing not just light but the very concept of illumination. Through his enhanced perception, Marcus could feel them charging weapons that would do more than destroy. They would retroactively delete the planet from history itself, making it so that Ethermore had never existed. "Evacuation is impossible," General Vorthon reported as he burst into the damaged throne room. His scales flickered with colors Marcus now recognized as desperation and fury. "They've surrounded the entire system with null space fields. Nothing can escape, and anyone who tries simply stops existing." Queen Lorelei materialized beside them, her ancient form moving with urgency that seemed strange for someone who had lived for millennia. "The Void Hunters are preparing for a total erasure strike. Not just of our world, but of our entire species. They mean to remove us from existence so completely that we will never have evolved in the first place." Marcus felt Zephys's horror through their bond. The guardian beast's entire purpose was to protect and preserve life. The idea of negating existence itself was anathema to everything they represented. But underneath the horror, Marcus sensed something else, a growing determination that fed off his own human stubbornness. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer through their shared tactical awareness. "The charging cycle for total erasure takes approximately 1 hour," General Vorthon replied, "but they're also launching conventional assault waves to test our defenses. Thousands of harvesters and support craft are descending as we speak." Through the shattered ceiling, Marcus could see streams of dark shapes pouring from the Devourer ships like a rain of crystallized nightmares. The Zephyrian defense forces were already engaging them. But even from this distance he could see that conventional tactics were failing. Energy beams simply vanished when they struck Void Hunter shields, and the graceful bioships of the defenders withered when touched by the attackers' reality negation fields. "We need to get to the surface," Marcus declared, feeling Zephys's agreement surge through their bond. "If we're going to make a difference, we can't do it from inside the palace." "That's suicide," General Vorthon protested. "The concentration of null space energy up there will tear apart anything that approaches." "Not anything," Marcus replied, his voice carrying harmonics that made everyone present pause. Through his bond with Zephys, he was beginning to understand the true scope of what they had become. "Zephys and I don't operate entirely within normal reality anymore. The bonding process didn't just link our minds, it created something that exists, partially outside conventional space-time." Queen Loreley's ancient eyes studied them both with an intensity that felt like being scanned by a living computer. "The deepest legends speak of this," she said slowly. Guardian bonds so complete that they transcend the normal limits of existence. But the risks are less than the certainty of extinction if we do nothing, Marcus finished. He could feel time pressing against them like a physical weight. Every moment they spent discussing options was a moment closer to total erasure. Zephys began to glow with an inner light that seemed to push back against the darkness pressing down from above. Their 6 arms spread wide, and Marcus felt power flowing through their bond unlike anything they had experienced before. It wasn't just energy. It was pure possibility, the fundamental force that allowed things to exist in the first place. Get everyone to the deepest shelters, Marcus instructed General Vorthon. We're going to try something that's either going to save the planet or make the erasure happen faster. The general's scales shifted through rapid patterns of color before settling on a deep blue that Marcus interpreted as trust mixed with resignation. The ancestors guide you both, he said formally before activating emergency protocols that began moving the palace's population to underground shelters. Queen Lirelei remained as the others evacuated. There is something you should know, she told Marcus urgently. The Void Hunters aren't just trying to destroy us. They're afraid. Our intelligence suggests they've been fleeing from something even worse than themselves, consuming galaxies in their path as they run. If you can find a way to make them understand that cooperation might serve them better than destruction. Understood, Marcus replied, though he wasn't sure how to negotiate with beings whose first impulse was to delete anything they didn't understand. Zephys expanded to their full size, their form now glowing so brightly that the damaged throne room filled with light that pushed back the encroaching darkness from above. Marcus climbed onto his companion's back, feeling their consciousness merge more completely than ever before. Individual identity became fluid as they prepared to face impossible odds. They rose through the shattered ceiling and into chaos. The sky above Ethermore had become a battlefield that defied conventional understanding. Zephyrian bioships twisted through 3-dimensional dogfights with Void Hunter craft, leaving trails of light and darkness that painted reality in impossible colors. Explosions bloomed and died in seconds, but the dark spaces left by Void Hunter weapons remained, holes in existence that would never heal. Marcus and Zephys moved through the battlefield like a force of nature itself. Their bonded consciousness allowed them to perceive the flow of combat in ways that gave them impossible advantages. They could see the quantum signatures of incoming attacks before they were fired, predict enemy movements through analysis of energy patterns, and respond with tactics that combined human creativity with guardian beast power in ways that had never been conceived. A squadron of harvesters converged on them, their reality deletion weapons charging in coordinated patterns meant to create an inescapable kill zone. But Marcus and Zephys had transcended the normal rules. They folded space around themselves, stepping through dimensions that the Void Hunters' weapons couldn't target, then emerged behind the squadron to strike at their quantum cores with precisely focused bursts of creative energy. The harvesters didn't explode. They were transformed, their hull materials rearranging themselves into crystalline gardens that bloomed with bioluminescent life. The Void Hunter crews found themselves trapped inside ships that had become the antithesis of everything they represented. Impossible, came transmissions from across the battlefield. They're reversing null space conversions. That violates fundamental principles of entropy. Maybe that's your problem, Marcus transmitted back, his voice carrying across all frequencies simultaneously through Zephys's energy manipulation. You've spent so long focused on endings that you've forgotten how beginnings work. More Void Hunter forces converged on their position, but Marcus and Zephys had found a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. They moved through the battle like dancers, converting destruction into creation, turning weapons of deletion into tools of growth and renewal. Every enemy they touched became something beautiful. Crystalline flowers, living light sculptures, geometric patterns that sang with harmonies that made nearby Zephyrian fighters stronger and faster. But even as they turned the tide of the surface battle, Marcus could feel the Devourer ship's main weapons approaching full charge. The erasure strike would bypass all their defenses and simply remove the entire system from existence. No amount of individual combat skill could counter that level of existential threat. We need to get to the Devourers themselves, Marcus realized. His consciousness partially merged with Zephys's tactical awareness. If we can reach their command systems, Maybe we can find a way to stop this before they complete the charging sequence. Zephyr's agreement flowed through their bond along with something that felt like grim anticipation. They began to rise toward the nearest Devourer ship, their form blazing with light that seemed to actively heal the wounds the Void Hunters had left in reality itself. The final confrontation was about to begin. The interior of the Devourer ship was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Where he expected corridors and chambers, he found spaces that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The walls seemed to be made of crystallized time itself, and gravity flowed in directions that his human mind couldn't fully process. Only through his bond with Zephyrus was he able to navigate the impossible geometry. They had penetrated the ship's hull, using a technique that neither of them could have conceived alone. Zephyrus's energy manipulation combined with Marcus's tactical creativity to create a dimensional phase that allowed them to pass through matter, while remaining solid enough to breathe and move. The sensation was indescribable, like being both fully real and completely ethereal at the same time. The command center should be at the geometric center of the ship, Marcus said, though in this space, concepts like center and direction had only approximate meaning. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel Zephyr's ancient knowledge mapping the ship's structure, while his human pattern recognition skills identified the most efficient route. As they moved deeper into the vessel, they encountered no resistance. The corridors were empty, filled only with a silence that felt heavier than mere absence of sound. It was the silence of things that had never existed, spaces where reality itself had been carefully excised and replaced with pure void. They're not ignoring us, Marcus realized suddenly. They're studying us. This whole ship is one massive observation system. The walls around them began to pulse with patterns of light and darkness that hurt to look at directly. Through the patterns, a voice emerged, not heard with ears, but impressed directly into their consciousness. Fascinating creatures, the voice said, carrying harmonics that suggested vast alien intelligence. You represent a paradox that we did not anticipate. You create where we delete, build where we negate, grow where we diminish. According to our calculations, you should not be able to exist. But we do exist, Marcus replied, feeling Zephyr's protective instincts surge through their bond. And we're not going to let you erase our worlds just because you don't understand us. Understanding is not the issue, the voice replied, and now Marcus could sense something like weariness in it. We understand perfectly. You represent the same force that destroyed our creators and drove us to flee across the galaxy. The force of uncontrolled growth, infinite expansion, life that consumes everything in its path until nothing remains but chaos. Through their shared consciousness, Marcus felt Zephyr's shock. The guardian beast's ancient memories contained no hint of such destruction, no record of life becoming a consuming force. Show us, Marcus said, his voice carrying harmonics of command that surprised him. The bonding had given him abilities he was still discovering. The ship around them transformed, its walls becoming transparent displays that showed the history of the Void Hunters' creators. Marcus saw a galaxy once filled with impossible beauty. Worlds, where crystalline beings like the Void Hunters had built civilizations of pure thought and mathematics. Their technology had been based on precision and control, on the careful maintenance of perfect order. Then came the growth force, life from another galaxy that spread like wildfire, adapting and changing and consuming everything in its path. Not maliciously, but with the unstoppable hunger of natural selection pushed to its absolute extreme. World after world fell to the expansion, their ordered perfection replaced by chaotic vitality that served no purpose but its own continuation. Our creators built us to survive what they could not, the voice continued. We exist outside the chaos of organic growth, immune to its consuming hunger. We negate the force of uncontrolled life before it can destroy everything in its path, as it destroyed our galaxy of origin. Marcus felt understanding dawn through his bond with Zephyrus. You're not evil, he said slowly. You're afraid. You've been running from something that terrified your creators so much that they chose extinction over facing it. And now we find that same force here in you and your kind, the voice replied. The bonding you represent, the unlimited potential for growth and adaptation, it is the beginning of the same plague that consumed our galaxy. But it doesn't have to be. Zephys spoke for the first time since entering the ship, their musical, voice-carrying harmonics that seemed to calm the chaotic energies around them. Growth can be guided. Life can learn wisdom. What destroyed your creator's galaxy was growth without purpose, expansion without direction. But we represent something different. Through their bond, Marcus felt Zephys sharing their own memories. Thousands of years of guardian beasts working to protect and preserve life, not just to spread it. The ancient partnership between the Zephyrians and their protectors had been built on balance, on the understanding that true strength came from controlled growth rather than unlimited expansion. The bonding process, Marcus added, understanding, flooding through him. It doesn't just combine our abilities, it combines our wisdom. Human adaptability guided by guardian beast preservation instincts. We represent growth that serves a purpose beyond itself. The patterns on the walls shifted, becoming less chaotic and more structured. The voice, when it came again, carried a note that might have been hope. If this is true, if your species represents guided growth rather than consuming expansion, then perhaps the cycle can be broken. Perhaps there is an alternative to endless deletion. Marcus felt the moment of decision approaching like a physical weight. Through his bond with Zephys, he could sense the massive weapon systems of all the Devourer ships, still charging toward the total erasure of Ethermore and everything in the system. But he could also sense something else. A vast loneliness. In the Void Hunters, the weight of countless millennia spent destroying rather than creating. Work with us, Marcus offered, his voice carrying through the ship's communication systems to reach every Void Hunter in the fleet. Instead of running from the growth force, help us guide it. Your knowledge of control and precision, combined with our understanding of balanced expansion, together we could ensure that life spreads throughout the galaxy without consuming everything in its path. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for hours, though Marcus knew only moments were passing. Through the ship's displays, he could see the other Devourer vessels, their crews engaged in rapid communications that appeared as cascades of mathematical symbols and logical structures. Finally, the voice returned. But now it came from multiple sources, the collective decision of the entire Void Hunter fleet. The proposal has merit, they announced. We will attempt cooperation. The erasure protocol is being suspended. But, understand, this alliance exists only as long as you prove that guided growth is possible. If your species begins to follow the path of the consumers that destroyed our creator's galaxy, we will complete what we began here. Marcus felt relief flow through him so powerfully that it nearly overwhelmed his senses. Through his bond with Zephys, he sensed his companion's joy, not just at the survival of their world, but at the possibility of converting destroyers into protectors. As they made their way back through the ship, Marcus marveled at how much had changed from a simple act of rescue in an asteroid field. He had saved a dying alien creature out of basic compassion, never imagining that it would lead to a bond that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. But perhaps that was the point. The greatest changes often began with the smallest acts of kindness, individual choices to help rather than ignore, to risk rather than play it safe. He had chosen to save Zephys's life, and in return, Zephys had chosen to trust him with powers beyond imagination. Now as they emerged from the Devourer ship to find Void Hunter and Zephyrian vessels working together to repair the damage done to Ethermore's atmosphere, Marcus understood that their story was just beginning. The bond between human and guardian beast had proven that different species could become something greater together than either could achieve alone. Across the galaxy, other humans would learn of the bonding process. Other guardian beasts would choose companions. And slowly, carefully, guided by wisdom rather than driven by hunger, life would spread to every corner of the universe, not as a consuming force, but as a creative one. The salvage operator and the royal heir had become the first of a new kind of partnership, one that would ensure the galaxy never again faced the choice between endless expansion and total extinction. Together, they had learned that the greatest Strength came not from conquest but from the courage to save something precious when it needed help the most.